Hello. Yes, we're going to kick off with Trump's lawsuit against Rupert Murdoch. I'm going to go through a couple of reasons why. There's been interesting things in the chat. I'm going to pick up a couple of them in a moment. Just to explain, though, as well. So, why is there a lot of emphasis on Donald Trump? And ultimately, it's because there are things that Donald Trump can do that will be interesting. Just interesting to me someone who's interested in political strategy, for example. What we're seeing going on in the United States it's a warning, but it's also a learning experience for anyone who is trying to combat far right populism in other countries. But specifically with Trump, anything that can enhance his power is very newsworthy in Britain. Anything that can weaken his power is very newsworthy in Britain. The reason for that is Donald Trump is doing quite a lot of material harm around the world, including to the UK economy. We had in May and June, I did a video today explain how actually we still got growth over the quarter. But nonetheless, growth in May and June was negative. And that was put down to Trump's tariffs. It wasn't put down, some people would think, well, hang on, wouldn't the employers' national insurance rise have had something to do with it? It's like, and the minimum wage rise and things like that. And it's like, yeah, but that was already factored in. That was already taken account of with the models that said our economy would still grow in those 2 months. So the fact that it didn't was a surprise, and the factor identified was specifically Trump's tariffs. So anything that can knock Trump off course, if he has to focus, say, on domestic issues, like, for example, his MAGA base burning all their hats, and the subsequent loss of support for future elections that will be parallel to that, then that is materially beneficial to us. Similarly, if he actually scores wins and tightens his grip on America, on domestic issues, that frees him up to focus more on international matters, and that could do us material harm. And remember, it doesn't matter what the tariffs are on Britain. Obviously, the lower the better, but they're still net bad compared with where they were at the start of the year. Even the relatively low level of tariffs on the UK is still worse than it was at the start of the year. But also, we need to trade with other countries. And if those other countries suffer, then we can't sell as much to them. So even if Trump isn't absolutely hammering us with the tariffs, if he's hammering important markets to us, including the EU, that reduces our potential for trade. And even though we've got lower tariffs for US trade, even our trade to the US is hurt more because the dollar is weaker. So Americans have to pay more for our imports, or we have to accept less money. And because he's applied the tariffs on anything coming into America, they're just paying more. And because he's applying higher tariffs to other things, like, they might import some British goods, but also some French goods. Well, now they're paying lots more for the French goods. Well, let's say they prioritise the French goods. They'll have to give up the British goods, right? So there's lots of things here. But I'll tell you what's really interesting about Trump suing Rupert Murdoch. And it's not the fact it's Rupert Murdoch, although it is interesting. So, Donald Trump has brought quite a few billionaires to heel. And it has to be said, there is no great schism between Murdoch and Trump. There's a bit of a rift, but there is no great schism. Remember, Rupert Murdoch also owns Fox News. Fox News is incredibly flattering towards Trump and his MAGA ideas. It backs Trump all the time. I mean, what I've seen several people point out with respects to this birthday letter that is alleged to have come from Trump is it's in the Wall Street Journal. Like, Trump's making a massive mistake here. He's proper Barbara Streisand in this. So, Rupert Murdoch ultimately, and we know this in Britain, he ultimately panders to his audience. Yes, we know he nudges his audience as well to believe certain things, but he ultimately gives them what they want. And we know this in Britain because every time it comes to election time, the Murdoch papers, they always sort of recommend someone for who you should vote for, but it's always the one that's going to win anyway. It's always the one the polls say will win, right? And it's the same in America. The Wall Street Journal doesn't appeal to MAGA. It appeals to a different class of... It's conservatives who read it, but it appeals to ones who are not MAGA, whereas Fox appeals to MAGA types. So Fox News, very complimentary towards Trump. Wall Street Journal, not so much. But the other thing is that I gather, I mean, I don't have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. I have one to the New York Times and I think the Washington Post. But I don't have one to the Wall Street Journal because, I mean, you know, why would I? But I gather it wasn't even prominently displayed. It wasn't like front page or anything. It was buried in there. So basically, if Trump hadn't made a fuss, how would, because Trump at the moment, remember, is it's his MAGA supporters he cares about, right? So he's trying to he's not doing a very good job of calming things down with his MAGA support base over the Epstein Files, but that's what he would like to do, right? And so how would those MAGA cap-wearing supporters, the ones who haven't set fire to their caps, how would they find out about this alleged birthday letter? First of all, this alleged birthday letter is like, I mean, I've read what's supposed to be in it. It's pretty tame for Trump. We know Trump's done way worse than in this letter. I really don't know what his problem is. But anyway, and we know he was a friend with Epstein at the time. Is he trying to actually deny he was ever friends with him? I thought his line was he was friends and then he found out about this and now he's a monster and he don't want anything to do with him, which is easy because he's dead. But, you know, is he trying to now claim he was never friends with him? Because that's mad. But anyway, how would a MAGA supporter find out about this letter? It's by... they're not going to read the Wall Street Journal. They might, I mean, it's not on the front page, so even walking past a newsstand isn't going to alert them to it. So the only way they're going to find out about it is if they happen to see someone posting it on social media. But who's going to post it on social media? People who don't like Trump. Well, if you're a MAGA supporter, you probably don't follow those people. And given that the outlets you're on are probably likely to be things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, they all throttle like liberal talking points and promote far-right talking points. So you're probably not going to come across it. But you are now, because Donald Trump is going to sue Rupert Murdoch. Apparently he called Murdoch to tell him to pull it when he heard it was going to happen. And Murdoch either couldn't or didn't. So he's going to sue Murdoch. He's going to sue two people from the Wall Street Journal. And then I think he might be suing the Wall Street Journal as well. And the combined lawsuit is for $10 billion. Well, this is pretty much half of Rupert Murdoch's net worth. So obviously he's going to fight it. Oh, we know that Trump has forced some people, like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, was one. There's been some people who were fighting legal action, lawsuits with Trump before he was elected. And they were going to win, by the way. Trump was completely, you know, dead and buried. But because they need his patronage, they've decided to settle. Well, Rupert Murdoch's not going to hand over half his wealth. So, of course, he's going to fight it. So all this is done now is to his support base, his MAGA supporters, who had no idea about this letter. All it does is now draw their attention to it. Because a £10 billion lawsuit, that's newsworthy. That's newsworthy anywhere. And it's going to carry on being newsworthy because now what's Trump going to do? One of three things. First of all, he cannot ultimately take him to court because what's he going to get Murdoch to do? He can't now remove it's been published, right? It's done, finished. He can take it off the online version if he wanted to, but I don't think he's going to. So that can't happen. You can't actually remedy the situation. So Trump can persist with the court case and lose, in which case he's just going to create a load of extra publicity and then he loses at the end of it, at which point, and then it's like, so you did write the letter, you can't even deny it. Or the third thing is he pursues the court case and wins, either because, bafflingly, the Wall Street Journal have made it up, which is probably very unlikely, or he achieves such control over judges over the course of the investigation that he basically can get, like Putin can, judges to do whatever he says. But he'll still be then raising the profile of it. But there we go. The likes of Thiel, Musk and Murdoch trying to force Trump out, Vance would have less baggage, would carry out their policies more effectively. He would he? JD Vance is an interesting one. So someone did ask earlier in the stream, about the prospect of Trump falling because of this. I couldn't possibly say, by the way. I have no idea whether this is the sort of thing that would ultimately cause Trump to fall. I mean, if we think about it, like, how does Trump ultimately fall? It can only be because in America you have this situation where the president cannot be investigated for anything other than by Congress. They can impeach him. Republicans don't really like Trump. They don't like what he's doing. So could I believe that if Trump... I mean, at the moment, the impression I get is there isn't a lot of common purpose between the Republicans and Trump, because Trump's not a Republican, just to be clear. He's not a Democrat either. You know, he's his own thing. I mean, he created MAGA. What Trump did is he created a political party, but because, like he said to Elon Musk, you can't actually win by creating a third party, he just infected an existing one. Much like UKIP did with the Conservative Party, 15 years ago. So he infected it. He basically, his MAGA is a cuckoo party. So, yeah, a lot of Republicans, I think, would like the excuse to get rid of him, and they might prefer J.D. Vance, who would obviously be the default. I mean, there's no choice in the matter. He would become the president. But Trump would have to... I mean, how much support would he realistically have to lose? Just because there's a lot of MAGA really railing against this Epstein Files thing, is it enough? This is the question. When push comes to shove, would they allow Republicans to drop Trump for it? Because I'm not sure they would, you know. I think they're making a big fuss. So there's a book I read last year. It was, I can't remember what put me onto it. Something put me onto it. And it's a book about the 3 different ways. So if you're part of an organisation or invested in it, you might just be a customer for a shop, or you might be a supporter of a political party. Whatever it is, you're sort of a supporter of a group or an organisation or even an entire country. And let's say it does something you're really unhappy with. And it sort of talks about the 3 different ways people approach the situation. And it's called Exit, and the title of the book is Exit, Voice and Loyalty. And these are like the 3 different options. So loyalty is, and you see this everywhere, don't you? Whenever a political group or any organisation does something that, is a bit beyond the pale, there'll always be a load of supporters who justify it and they'll rationalise it in their own heads to make it sound all right. Like Trump. He wasn't going to get in any more wars. He wasn't going to get American troops involved in any more wars. Bombs Iran, right? Completely new war, by the way. He claims wars wouldn't even start if he was president. Well, the Israel-Iran war started. So Israel bombs it. A load of people straight away go, they justify it somehow, right? As if it's somehow fine. So the same thing will happen here. There'll be a load of MAGA supporters who won't actually really care about the Epstein Files. Not all of them care about it. And if they do, not as much as the stuff that they think Trump is delivering on. So then your second option is the voice. That is, you speak out. So the likes of Laura Loomer and people like that, right? So they speak out against it. They're not necessarily saying that Trump needs deposing or this is it, Trump's a failure, we should get someone else. What they're doing is they're just trying to pressure Trump into doing what they want. So they use their voice. They protest effectively. And then there's exit. So these are the ones who will go, right, Trump's not the man for us. Yeah, we think he should be impeached. We think he should go. So those are the crucial one. It's that last group. How many of the MAGA supporters will go for the exit option? Because as pissed off as a lot of them clearly are, if they think Trump is otherwise delivering on what they want, and they don't believe anyone else would, like, do they believe that J.D. Vance would release the Epstein Files and do all the other stuff? They can't possibly know, because there's zero way J.D. Vance would publicly let it be known. He won't even hint at it, right? Because that would be far too precarious for him. He will not even hint at the fact he would release the Epstein Files, or more than Trump intends to anyway. So they'll have no idea whether he would even do that, and they certainly have no idea whether he would pursue the other policies. So, you know, but it is interesting this, because Trump, like when I did my video yesterday on it, I did the video before Trump had announced that he was releasing anything. And then because he announced it literally just before, when I had no time left, I had to do a hasty sort of edit of it. So I didn't actually know the full details at the time I did it of what was being released. So what's being released is just like court papers, really, relating to the case. Jury papers, I think. So, and it's quite funny because Donald Trump today has said that, you know, he's ordered these papers to release, but he says, but they'll never be happy. They'll not be happy with whatever I release. And there's part of it where you think to yourself, that's true. Yeah. If what he releases doesn't expose the conspiracy they believe exists, no, they won't be happy, right? Because they're convinced it exists without any evidence, certainly without proof. So that is true, but that is of his own making, because he has fed conspiracy theories for years. He's created some of his own, but he has certainly fed the existing ones. He's going to be the ones that shines a spotlight on everything. So he cannot complain that he is now dependent upon the support of people who are not going to be happy no matter what you release, unless it exposes like the deep state. But if it turns out that their conspiracy theories aren't actually true, if it turns out that Epstein, for example, wasn't blackmailing people, or if he was, that there is actually no evidence that he was, then no, they're not going to be happy. And the thing that will make, but the second thing I would say is the thing that's going to increase their chances of not being happy is the fact that Trump is not releasing all the files. So already before he's even released anything, these MAGA types are already saying, these aren't the files we wanted, or they're not the entirety of the files we wanted. So he is really stuck. He is really stuck on. He's going to be stuck on this. So it is going to be interesting how many, as I say, how many end up because if there'll be some MAGA who may want those files releasing, but if they see that Trump's serious and really doesn't want to release it, and they see the damage this is causing to him, they'll switch to the loyalty option, because they'll decide they'd rather, they still like Trump, or they still think his net's good for them. Then they'll be the ones who'll keep pushing it, but they don't want him removed, but they will keep pushing it. Then there will be the ones who, after a time, if it looks like Trump really will not release them, will go, well, you're no use to us anymore, get gone. And maybe those people will believe that J.D. Vance would release them, particularly as J.D. Vance does not have the authority of Donald Trump. J.D. Vance does not have a natural support base, not a big one, political one. So if they did impeach Trump before the midterms, I'm not sure I'm saying that is possible, but if they did, and J.D. Vance took over, you could almost sort of say to him, well, you have to release the files if you want our support during the midterms. So they may think they can lean on Vance easier than they can lean on Trump. So, so it'll be interesting. Have I checked out the English devolution bill? If so, what do I think? Only bits of that, I'm afraid. So I haven't really formed thoughts just yet. William there saying, I feel Trump's health has seriously deteriorated over the last year. Yeah, there's a lot of people saying that. Have I noticed bruised hands and swollen ankles lately? Could this cause concern with the Republican Party? I haven't noticed his ankles, in all honesty, because I've never seen them. I have noticed some discoloration on the back of his right hand recently. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's quite clear Trump has been suffering from some form of cognitive decline. I don't know whether dementia or something similar for some time now. And things like that can easily accelerate. So, yeah, I've heard it said his brain could become a vegetable at any moment. And it's like, well, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, who knows? I mean, again, looking at it from a selfish point of view, from the rest of the world's point of view. Because there's a lot of people around Trump who are invested in the domestic project Project 2025. But although Project 2025 also has some of the international stuff as well, I'm not sure how many, for example, of the people around Trump who could who could control his strings if he did actually become a vegetable, and they had to do a sort of a weekend at Bernie's type thing. I don't know how many of them are really sold on the tariff strategy. So, maybe it would work out in that the tariffs would be reined back a bit. Vince there saying it's anything that comes from a grand jury subpoena, but that's not actually allowed under US law except to other law enforcement. I'm not sure what that's in relation to. Is that in terms of what he's releasing? JD Vance becoming president would be very bad news. I don't know. It's difficult to say. I can see where people will be coming from on that, because he has got all his faculties. He's also a very unpleasant man. And a lot of what Trump's doing, he would have technically the executive power to do. What would be interesting with JD Vance, there's a lot of unknowns for me. So let's just throw a few potential unknowns out. A lot of what Trump is doing, he doesn't have the authority to do. He's doing it because Congress is letting him get away with it and the Supreme Court is letting him get away with it. Would the Supreme Court and Congress both back JD Vance? Because again, it depends on why they're backing him. Some may back Trump because they think there is personal benefit to themselves out of it. Some are doing it out of fear of the angry mob which he leads. So would they, would Vance want to go as far as Trump is doing? And if he does, if he would, will he be able to command the sort of respect via fear or whatever within the Supreme Court and Congress? That's not clear. So I'm not sure. I'm not discounting the idea that JD Vance could be worse. He might be. But I'm not, there's a few unknowns for me, so I'm not sure. Am I suggesting Trump becomes like Ariel Sharon? Well, could be much worse. The bruising on his hand could be from blood tests, swollen ankles indicative of several circulatory conditions, from heart failure to leg veins not working properly. I mean, there are multiple things that can certainly explain these things. I mean, for example, I had, last year, some of you know, I had temporal arteritis. And then I was on steroids, and they caused my ankles to swell up. So it could just be medication he's taking. He could be on steroids for something, right? So yeah, there's any number of things that can explain. I mean, that's the problem with it, with symptoms. There can be lots of different things, and unless you're the actual investigating doctor, you don't really know. Have I asked Gary Stevenson to do a discussion video on your channel about land tax value? No, or land value tax. To replace council tax as well instead of just wealth tax would be a coup to win him over on this. I don't think so. When it comes to one-off discussions, I don't really find them valuable. I think regular discussions, the likes of which I and Graham do on Politics Social, those sort of things, like podcasty type things, are good. But if you're going to have a one-off discussion with someone, I do think it's probably a good idea that at least one of them is an expert. So Gary and myself are both very interested in tax policy, but neither of us are experts. So you'd want like, a tax lawyer. I talked to a tax lawyer recently, but not about this. Or an economist who looks at this sort of thing. Otherwise, what's the point? You just got two people who aren't experts talking to each other about something they're not experts on. But I would prefer it in general. If you're going to ask, would I like it if more people... Because here's the thing I have about like wealth taxes, right? Land tax is the obvious form of wealth tax. And I'll tell you why. It's not just because of the arguments I could make for it. I've done those before. It's because I have seen serious heavyweight economists suggesting it. Do you know what? I haven't seen a single economist advocating the form of wealth taxes that the populists at the moment are talking about. You know, the various people, you know, the Clive Lewis's, the Richard Bergens, people like that, even Gary Stevenson, So when they took the sort of wealth taxes they talk about, find me the group of experts that says, oh yeah, that'll totally work, because they don't exist. And what we're in danger of here is falling for the same lies the Brexiteers fell for. You know, what ultimately did Brexiteers get screwed over by? Because there were a load of economists saying Brexit will be really bad, and then there were a load of non-economists, non-experts saying, no, it'll be totally good. Oh, bloody thing. And we're in danger of doing the same thing because, you know, there's many of us look at wealth tax. I have no ideological support for wealth tax, but wealth inequality has gone massively out of control. I don't see any way of bringing it back in line purely with income tax. You know, you cannot bring wealth back in line with taxes on income. So you do need a wealth tax of some, we do technically have some wealth taxes, but they're not really very serious. So that's what I would say. You know, if a load of people are calling for what is clear, and anyone who tells you tax policy is not complicated is definitely lying to you or very, very stupid. So if they say they've got this simple solution, it solves all these problems, it's always a lie. But if they've got a solution, whether it's simple or complex, if you cannot find a load of credible experts backing it up, and I mean credible experts, then no. Liam Byrne has a clip on the difficulty of creating wealth tax. Oh, I've not seen that one. But what I would say, I mean, it's really quite simple. Think about different types of wealth. Think about types of wealth. So let's split it up into 4 types of wealth. You've got money, you've got land, you've got property, and you've got possessions, right? So money, you can just move it. When most people talk about wealth tax, they think they mean taxing money in the bank. Just move it to a different bank. That's really easy. Like, a lot of people get hung up on this idea of, oh, but it's a myth that all the millionaires and billionaires are leaving the country. Yeah, it is. They don't have to leave the country. They just move their money. They only need so much money to live in this country, right? They only need, the only money they need in any British bank, if there were to be a wealth tax on money, the only money they need in that British bank is whatever is needed to cover their living costs here. They don't need anything else. They can just shift it offshore. People do it all the time. Jacob Rees-Mogg shoved his offshore with Brexit, didn't he? Do you remember? He got caught, secretly recorded, saying to a load of people he'd moved his money to Dublin, actually. All right, it's a great idea leaving the EU. I'm just going to move all my money to the EU now. And he was advising others to do the same. It's really easy, just move it. Click of a button, it's gone. Outside of the jurisdiction of HMRC. So then you have land. Land is my preference. Why is land so good? And again, this is me basing it off, including one Nobel Prize winning economist, right? Because you can't move it. If we could move land that easily, I'm pretty sure we'd have got rid of Essex by now, right? Sorry to anyone in Essex, but you know, it's more trouble than it's worth. But you can't. So if you own half of Hertfordshire, you can't move it to the Isle of Man or Guernsey or the Cayman Islands, right? Or Dubai. You also can't conceal that you own it. Now, some people have suggested sometimes you get a situation where it's like, it's not clear who owns a thing. Well, that's really easy. The government can just say, who owns this? There's a tax due on it. Oh, we're not sure. Okay, it must belong to the state then. If no one comes forward to claim this land, it must belong to the government. It doesn't belong to anyone. It must be the government. So we'll just take it then. Easy. So if someone wants to claim ownership of the land, they can pay the tax bill on it as well. And also, it goes back to what someone was saying about replacing council tax. That's exactly right. That's what I've said for a while. Again, based on what economists are saying. I'm not making it up. I'm not an economist. But you can adjust the level of tax according to its benefit to society. Is this land of benefit to society? Well, yes, I built a factory on it, providing loads of jobs. Brilliant. You get a really low rate of land tax. Yes, I'm farming this land for food. Brilliant. You can have a really low rate of land tax, maybe 0, right? If it's really beneficial. Yes, this is the plot of land I live on as my primary residence. Okay, you can pay a low rate. So again, that's how you replace council tax. You get rid of council tax, you just have land tax. And it could be lower. That's what people who've worked this out say. The land tax on your home could be lower than council tax, because there's whole tracts of land out there, huge tracts of land, that are not paying a penny. Grouse moors. I always go on about grouse moors, sorry, but they're the biggest waste of space ever. Grouse moors. Tax the crap out of them. They're of no use to society. Zero use. It's a way of ambushing poor innocent birds. That's what a grouse moor is, right? It's for ambushing birds. And the ambush is by people who can well afford to buy plenty of stuff from the butcher. They don't need to go out hunting. So, land tax. Easy. Do that. Then there's the next one, property. Problem with property is if you charge, and this is why we sort of do have one, like council tax is effectively, it's not a very good wealth tax because it's not proportionate, but it is sort of, because it's like supposed to be based on the value of your home, except it's not, but it is supposed to be. So it is sort of a wealth tax. But, you know, if you charge too much and someone can't afford it, then it's like, so what do you do then? You're forcing them to sell that property. Same with possessions. Now, the possessions is a really difficult one. So when people do something simple and say, oh, you know, do you know that one of the latest is, oh, just tax wealth above £10 million, and people think that's easy. All right, then. So what if your wealth's mostly in possessions? What if it's in like objet d'art and things like that, right? Paintings, sculptures, you know, very, very expensive cars, stuff like that. You do this as an example for me. How many of you think you could audit? You might not think you're wealthy, right? And you know, many of you are not in any useful measure, but you've all got possessions. You all own things. How many of you think you could audit everything you own and come up with a believable value for it? I mean, everything, every tea towel, every bog roll. How many of you think you could audit everything you own and say what its value is? Because that's what you're asking very rich people to do. Only very rich people, if you leave it to their... See, here's the thing, of course. You leave it to them to work out how much all their possessions is worth. They'll be underestimated quite a lot. So what do you do about that? Oh, well, what do you do? What do you do about that? You can't send someone in to do it for them, because who's going to pay for that, right? So, you know, taxing possessions, taxing property, taxing money... the money can be moved. The possessions and the property are really difficult to value easily. The property you could value, but then you're sort of kicking people off their property, right? You're forcing them to sell. So you'll end up with lots of like legal arguments and stuff like that. Someone who is property rich but money poor, like a pensioner. There's people in the south of England who are just ordinary, they're like the ordinary pensioners, right? They worked as a police officer or a fire officer or something, or a nurse, but their house is worth 600,000 quid. Because in the 70s, it was actually, you could afford it on a nurse's salary, but now you can't. But it doesn't matter. They bought it when in the 70s. Now it's worth 600,000, not 600 quid, sorry, 600,000 pounds. Might have been 600 quid in 1970. It wouldn't have been. 600,000 pounds, right? But let's say they're just on a nurse's pension and state pension, and you charge them a whack-eye tax for it because it's worth 600,000 pounds. Well, they can't afford it. So you're kicking pensioners out of the home now. No, the only one that will work is land tax. It's the only one. Anyway, rammed on. Let's go on. Right, let's go through some here. One of you say grouse moors need leaving alone to properly rewild. Feels right they are for toffs to be cruel. Yeah, well, we can rewild some of it. I've got other uses for other bits of it. We don't need it to be as big as they are. Inheritance tax needs to be enforced or reformed. Well, there was a real opportunity to reform it, wasn't there? I mean, I will still say, as much as I think the farmers have been bloody stupid, there were various experts who said because the problem is what Rachel Reeves did with inheritance tax on farmland is normal inheritance tax is 40% above a certain amount, right? It's free. Most of us are not going to pay inheritance tax ever. Even if you inherit your parents' house and it's worth a bit, you're not going to pay inheritance tax on it unless it's worth a lot. Even if that nurse with the 600 grand house leaves it to their kids are probably not going to pay any inheritance tax on it if there's like more than one kid, right? But, you know, the 40% is the normal rate above the threshold. And what Rachel Reeves did is she said it would be 20% on farmland. So there's still an incentive to buy land as a tax fiddle. Why would you do that? It should have been 40%. And then by charging 40% on the fake farmers, she could have actually carried on and say, but actual, because one idea, I mean, I had an idea myself, but I'll go with the expert idea, which was to say that it's 40%, 40% inheritance tax rate, but you only become liable for it when you sell the land. So if you never sell the land, you never become liable for it. Now, to me, I still think there's a few problems with that, but that would at least stop people buying land as a tax fiddle. It would definitely stop that. Oh, John, they're saying grouse moors and golf courses. Oh, yeah, golf courses. I mean, I have said myself. I mean, I'm not a golf fan, so I am always wary about trying to be too unpleasant to be, because there are golf fans. But they are an epic waste of space, and there's a lot of chemicals go on them. They're really not good for nature. I mean, what I might say is if it's a council-run golf course, it could have an exemption, but not a private golf course, and charge Trump's through the nose, but probably wait till he's not president anymore. But then that's the good thing about it as well. Land tax would take years to do, because it wouldn't be you wouldn't dare cock it up. So you'd have to get it right. You'd have to spend you'd have to have a commission to really properly look at it. So you'd probably be talking for the next parliament anyway if you started it now. Primary residents should have some kind of exemption, not the other 10 properties. Well, there already is. I mean, you would just do the same as you do with council tax. So it's already the case that, in fact, in parts of Wales, it's, you pay a lot for council tax on a non-primary residence. So it is already the case you pay more council tax, although someone may say that it's not always the case, but it is the case, and certainly in some places. You would just do the same for land tax. So when I said with land tax, it's your primary residence, so that gets the lower rate. If it's not your primary residence, higher rate. Again, what do you use it for? If you're going to say you use it to sometimes visit the coast, it's a holiday home, well, that's for you going on holiday then. That's not useful to society. In fact, you're depriving someone in the local area because you might have it vacant the rest of the time. In fact, I'll tell you what I might do. I mean, this is, again, you can go into granular detail on this, and this is why it would take years, because you'd come up with lots of different scales for it. So let's say someone has a holiday home, right? But they like, I'd like to buy a holiday home in some Yorkshire coast place, like Whitby, for example. My wife's friend, they have and her husband, they have a place in Whitby, a holiday flat. But they also rent it out. So what you could say, so let's say I bought a bungalow in Whitby, just for example, to visit at the weekend or something. But that was it. It was just mine because I'm quite a private person, and I don't let it out. So they could say, Phil, well, you're going to pay through the nose for this because it's not your primary residence, and it's empty most of the time. That's not useful to society, right? So I'd have to pay through the nose. Whereas if you say to someone that actually it's occupied a lot of the time because of letting out, and you can prove it with receipts, then you could get a reduction, but it would still be higher than it would be if it was a primary residence. So you can, there's things like that, because there's an economic benefit to, having holidaymakers in an area. So there's lots of things you can do. Another word for house rich and cash poor is rich. You will never get people to believe, I mean, don't get me wrong, right? This nurse struggling on a normal nurse's pension with a 600 grand house in the south of East England. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a social animal, right? So my natural instinct is, why don't they sell it, move up to Yorkshire, buy a palace for like £5.50 and pocket the rest? I've known people who've done that. I've known people, teachers, who got on the housing ladder in the south of England, spent 20 years there, then sold up, moved up north, bought themselves a really nice house and still pocketed a load of extra money. So you could say they do that, but then if they're friends and if they're not I'm a hermit, right? As long as I'm with my wife, I don't care about anyone else. But if you've got a close social group, you've got friends and family and stuff there, then you can't tell them to move. So what are you going to tell this nurse? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not their fault that the cost of living in their village or town or whatever has gone through the roof in the last, 40 years, 50 years. That's their house. If they sell it, what are they going to do? The rest of the houses are all really expensive. They can't just downgrade. So you're kicking a nurse out of their home. You're forcing them to move to the north, which, some people consider a terrible punishment. Don't know why. Problem is you close one loophole, they'll find another 5 loopholes to exploit, design the tax system, benefit them and only them. So the other thing about being very wealthy, and we're talking about people who are very wealthy, is, so someone like me, for example, maybe if I had a tax lawyer look at my finances, they could save me a bit of tax, right? If I was so minded to do that. Wouldn't be worth it. They'd save me less tax, assuming they save me any, because my expenses are actually fairly straightforward, actually. But they would, if they saved me anything, it would be less than their fee. So it's not worth it, right? It's not worth it for most people. But let's say you earn so much money, or you have so much money that is liable for tax, and they can get you out of it. If 1% getting you out of an extra 1% tax is worth like £100,000 to you, it's worth paying a tax lawyer, right? And so that is the problem. You are going to get experts to look over it and find loopholes for you. But at the same time, I'm not sure I agree closing one loophole opens 5. I don't think it does. If you take your time to do it properly, you should restrict the net. You can say you won't get rid of all of the loopholes, but actually I think with land tax, you absolutely could close a lot. The only way you'll create loopholes is if you try to create exemptions for political reasons. So one big factor, for example, of land tax, if you applied it properly, is the king would suddenly be liable for a load of extra tax. That's fine, he can afford it, he's a billionaire, right? So now if you had a situation where a government realised that it needed to do it and this was the only realistic way to raise the sort of tax revenues the public expected you to do, but you sort of want to, because of our sort of feudal, or the feudal system we had, you want to sort of show due deference to the crown, and you try and create an exemption for them, you potentially create exemptions for others as well. So you're best off not trying to create exemptions. If the fewer exemptions you create, the fewer loopholes you'll create for others. Who's popping there saying we bought our house for $78,000 in 2021. I think we got an amazing deal just at the right time. Yeah, you didn't get that in the southeast of England, did you? That probably was a good deal at the time. But even like where I am, round where I am, you can get a nice 3-bedroom semi for £140,000. It's people in the south and go, you what? We can't even get a garage for £140,000. It's Chris. How is it fair that a worker is paying more tax on their income than a toff who gets their income from assets? It's not remotely fair. It's absolutely not remotely fair. I brought this very thing up on that video I did with that tax lawyer. It's not. But at the same time, how are you going to stop them? It's literally that. It's really that simple. How are you going to stop them? If you try and tax money, they'll just move it. Perfectly legal. Can't stop them. And some people will say something like, oh, well, what about exit taxes or something? Problem with exit taxes is it's also an entrance tax. We've just got to the point now where Labour have increased the level of inward investment into Britain to the highest rate since the Brexit referendum. We don't really want to knacker that. So people have to be free to move their money around. Like even in the EU, which did famously tackle some tax avoidance schemes. And we are, to be fair as well. Like a lot of people don't realise, I think, that Rachel Reeves is actually taking out a lot of tax avoidance schemes. She's not ignoring it. It's not, she has actually got HMRC to go after quite a lot of tax avoidance schemes. She's increased the number of tax inspectors. She's going after them in court. So she is actually working on this. But, yeah, how is it fair? It's not fair. This is the point I brought up. How is it fair that Rishi Sunak, do you remember a couple of years ago, he posted his tax return summary and he was paying something like a rate of tax of 25, 26% on over £2 million of income. Whereas a nurse, hang on, let me just look it up. Oh no, I can't remember. But a nurse could easily be paying significantly more than that. He was paying, I worked it out as like a senior nurse, he was paying a lower percentage of tax than a senior nurse. And it's not fair. It's not fair. But you can't pass a law to make things fair if you don't have the power to do it. The government can only do what it has the power to do. It doesn't have the power to tax. If it tries to tax money, you could end up taking in less revenue, because there'll be people who do have money in the bank in this country, and it'll be generating interest and stuff which is taxed. So they'll have money which is being taxed. If you try and increase the rates, there comes a point where they'll just move the money. And then they're not paying anything on it. They're paying zero. So at the moment they're paying something. It's not enough, but they're paying something. If they move it, they're paying nothing. And that's the problem. You know, some tax ideas actually risk bringing in less tax. So, and it would be different if the government, if the tax revenues were plenty, if we had enough, you could sort of, from a fairness point of view, just try and shift the balance. You could say, you know, if you had a situation where we had a government that was in place for long enough, and if we had proportional representation, we might get that. It might be a different combination of parties, but a government that looks after the national interest. And if they're in a position where they thought, right, tax revenues are all right now in terms of the amount, but let's see if we can distribute it more fairly, you'd then have the scope to risk a few things. You could try a few riskier tax breaks, tax policies, and see what happens. If it ends up you actually just chase money away, then you go, okay, well, that was a bad idea. Let's not do that again. But at the moment, we can't. If Rachel Reeves even loses £1 billion, with an ill thought out tax policy, then it's like the Princess and the Pea. She'll come up in a bruise. Isaac there saying, my late grandmother had a monthly mortgage for a 3-bed semi, nice part of Middlesbrough. I mean, I guess there must be a nice part of Middlesbrough. With a garage, private parking space for 2 additional cars, a large garden. Mortgage was £2.55 a month. I'm guessing this is a grandmother who lived a very long time ago. As in the 50s. Would be able to a £50 mortgage per month in today's money, according to the Bank of England. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not just that inflation has made the cost of houses go up. The real terms cost of houses has absolutely ballooned. The 1970s was probably, maybe the early 80s, was probably the last time you could get, an ordinary worker could get a nice house. Pretty much anywhere. So you're in links, and now your new mayor's Andrea Jenkins. It is, I'm afraid, of Reform UK fame. Never mind Reform UK fame, of Reform UK. Her fame came from the Tory party. But yeah, I mean, things are cheaper here. They're even cheaper. If you go further north, it's even cheaper. Labour need to divert wealth away from London and the southeast into the north. So they are actually doing that. In fact, Sadiq Khan's not been very happy with some of Labour's spending plans, specifically because there's money going on, particularly like transport projects. There's money going on to transport around the rest of England. It's not coming to London. Like Sadiq Khan's going, where's my share? And it's like, sorry, mate, London's got enough. I mean, it's probably not true. You can never have enough, but you know what I mean. So they are already doing that. So Boris Johnson talked about levelling up all the time. Labour are not talking about levelling up at all, probably because the term has now become toxic, and yet it is what they're doing. But they do need to talk about it somehow. I get how they might not want to call it levelling up, although if they can say we're doing it for real, I don't really see that the term has become toxic, but if they think it has. But they do need to talk about it. Why can't we do what the US does and make it no matter where your money's located, you still have to pay tax to the HMRC? Because we're not the world's most powerful economy. It's really that simple. You know, we're not the world's most powerful economy. We can't enforce it. Pete, they say I bought a two-bed flat in '84 for £13,000. Just sold a two-bed flat, same town, for 100,000, Scotland. In Scotland. I'm sure. Well, it depends where, I guess. I mean, there'll be some parts of Scotland where you can get really. I mean, the parts of rural north of England where you can still get houses quite cheap, but you'd be out in the sticks a bit. So, I mean, if you worked from home, it'd probably be okay as long as you could get a decent internet connection. Problem with rural areas, of course, is transport if you don't drive. And what's the internet? I mean, that would be the big thing for me. What's the internet like? So, in theory, of course, I mean, I could live anywhere. I can do my job living anywhere. My wife obviously still needs to be here, and she actually likes her house. She likes the house. I keep saying, she keeps asking me when I've won the lottery, which I haven't yet. Well, I actually no, that's a lie. I win the lottery multiple times a month, just not enough, not what she considers winning the lottery. The thing is, like, but she'd still want to live here if we won. So it's like she only wants to win, so she'd give up a job. But anyway. Steve's just said, I can put up with the annoying ads. So the ads should be a lot better than they were. It may. I think. I'm afraid if it's people, I think it's probably people watching on phones. Hopefully, it will get better. YouTube have actually made some improvements recently. So if you're not watching on a phone, and I know a lot of people watch on a phone. I'm sorry about that. But say seeing Farage's face, not so much. You're getting adverts about Nigel Farage then. What have you been clicking on? I don't get adverts about Nigel Farage. I get adverts about Monday.com. Those are my YouTube adverts. What do I get? I get Monday.com, which I did try once. It's not useful to me. It's nice, don't get me wrong, it's nice, but it's not useful to me. What else? Can't remember. I usually get educational courses come up a lot for me. I'm not sure why. I get weird adverts. Oh, I'll tell you what I get a lot of. Those adverts that are trying to tell you, oh, if you bought a car on finance from some pissing time or long time ago, you might be due for some money. And it's like, yeah, I ain't got any documents from that time. I'm not interested. And they're all really amateurish as well. It's like, it's obviously a design feature of them to make them look like it's just someone randomly saying it. I get those all the time. I hate them. But I don't block adverts because I'd be a massive hypocrite if I did. So I just watch them. Oh, who's popping this out? YouTube Premium, so I don't get ads. Yeah, I don't get YouTube Premium either because, again, I feel I need to experience the ad. I need the ad experience to know what it's like for others. Like, for example, when I first started doing monetize YouTube, which was a different channel to this, 10 years ago now. In fact, it actually almost... this September, it will be 10 years ago since I first monetized YouTube. But... one thing I did and then immediately didn't do ever again was, you know, the unskippable ads. They're horrible, aren't they? So I don't know whether they're any better anymore, but I put that, because I just ticked everything, right? I ticked ads, yeah, ads, whatever. And then the unskippable ads are so obnoxious. I thought, yeah, I can't do this to people. So I don't have those ticked on. Oh, Mark said I'm on a phone, had 0 ads this time. I will point out, in terms of ads on YouTube, it is just worth pointing out. There isn't a set rate of adverts on YouTube. It's nothing to do with the channel. Obviously, a channel can disable ads and then you don't get any ever. But if ads are going to be on, the rate at which you get ads has got nothing to do with the channel. It's entirely to do with you. YouTube shows you as many ads. Actually, I say it's got nothing to do with the channel. It's not true. There are 3 settings I can put on, and I have it on the conservative setting. So I have it on the least intrusive setting when I go live, which YouTube aren't happy with me about, but you know, I do. But it is the rate is also based on you, if they think, so if you're someone who constantly just skips ads, they don't show you as many. Whereas if you're someone who engages a bit, then they show you a few more, right? When's the gaming spin-off channel happening for? I don't think it really is. Graham had this sort of idea, and I did think about it. If we're going to be honest, I'm not saying politics and gaming doesn't cross over, because it does. But if you look at gaming channels that discuss politics, they're all notable for being very right wing. Now, I don't know if most gamers are right wing. In my experience of like the people I've gamed with, I wouldn't say so. But every single channel that's like a big enough channel for me to notice that also discusses politics is very right wing. And I mean, usually, I don't mean like centre right. I mean, they're usually really very right wing. And socially very authoritarian, shall we say, monocultural, shall we say. So there we go. But there, that's it on adverts anyway, and that's it also on gaming politics crossovers. Any chance we can get Boris Johnson to attend a Coldplay concert? He wouldn't care, would he? Do you know what? Wouldn't it be amazing if he's actually settled down and he's now faithful to his wife? Wouldn't it be remarkable? Because when he got married, everyone just assumed, oh, how long's this going to last then? Because, of course, he's a serial marrier, really. He's a serial husband, and unfaithful husband at that. And, maybe he is. Maybe he's faithful now. Maybe he's faithful to Carrie. Maybe he does as he's told. But there we go. Pygmalion say, I get a lot of inappropriate ads for bras and perfume. Yeah, fortunately, I don't get those. Unfortunately, now that you've made me say it, and because the algorithm is always listening, I shall probably now get adverts for bras and perfumes. But there it is. I'm a gamer and thoroughly left wing. I'm not on Twitch either. But I mean, it's just that I have never seen a major gaming channel that discusses politics and discusses left-wing politics. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I've never come across it. But I come across plenty of gaming, and they are gaming channels. I mean, they're primarily gaming channels, but they will also discuss politics. And their politics is always, shall we say, MAGA, in MAGA alignment, MAGA compatible. You know. So I did think about it, but then I just thought, yeah, there's clearly no market for it. I'm not going to be a trendsetter. I'm not a pathfinder on something like this. I can't even at the moment. I keep thinking about, should I do just a bit of content on my gaming channel just to keep my hand in? And I keep going, oh, should I? Maybe not. So I can't even maintain content on my gaming channel at the moment, let alone then do politics or create one specifically for gaming and politics. But it is what it is. Really like to get into international politics around Ukraine. A lot of stuff happening is not on the right, and it's not the right wing supporting Ukraine. So, well, I mean, Ukraine is an interest in terms of geopolitics. If I were to do a regular series, I mean, I tend to focus mostly on things that affect British politics when I can. Anyway, in answer to Ivan from the start of it, you know, Trump comes up because British politics at the moment is not as spicy. I mean, I do still do it. It's not like I've just switched to doing American politics. I'm doing British politics. It just doesn't get as many views. Trump is impactful on British politics. I don't think you can always understand what's going on in British politics without understanding what Trump's doing as well. But also, I mean, it just gets more views. He's more in because people recognise that Trump has a material effect on their lives. Ironically, Trump has a bigger effect on most people's lives than most members of the government. Probably not Keir Starmer himself, but most other members of the government. But Ukraine is one where there is interest. Like when I've done videos on, for example, what's happening in Gaza, some people will say to me, why don't you talk about Gaza? And it's like, well, I do every now and then, but it just, my audience, you know, doesn't have the same level of interest for it. And I'm not one of those who's just going to pretend to care about Palestinians, but just use it as an excuse to moan about, you know, the British government or something. But it just doesn't, you know, on YouTube, you can do the odd video where you know it's not going to get views and you'll take the hit. But if you want your channel to be sustainable, most of your content, the vast majority of your content, has to be the content where you think it will get the views. You know, you have to be focused on your audience. You build, you target, it's up to you what that audience is. It's up to you what audience you want to target. But then once you've decided on that, you have to provide what they will want to listen to. Every now and then I do a video that I think will be a hit. Like, not a hit as in a smash hit, a hit as in I'll take a hit on views. It won't do very well. And these days, not doing very well is doing really badly because there has been that target audience that I'm still maintaining has shrunk. It's literally shrunk since last year. It's all there is to it. But that's the audience I want to maintain. So, you know, you have to just do. Ukraine, depending on what it is, people don't want a running commentary on military strategy. But when something big happens, I will absolutely do a video on Ukraine because that, as long as it's, you know, depending on what it is, can do well. I may even do a video on Armenia next week. That might be a bit of a surprise. We'll see if that does well. Armenia may be a topic of conversation in one of my videos next week. Can anyone guess what that'll be about? But anyway, there it is. We've all run out of time, I'm afraid. But I'll leave you with that thought. John Hart there saying, Perun started out as a gaming channel, not right wing at all. I'm not familiar with that one. I might look at it in a minute then. Do you mean started off gaming and went into politics or something? Gamers Nexus very active on right to repair. I like that. But anyway, we'll leave it where it is. Thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.